the advent of artificial general intelligence is potentially 5 years away. I always say 2030 to be safe, but what I call IA, intelligent assistance, that goes from controlling emissions, protein folding, all the practical things that we think that machines should be doing because they're better and faster. So Google Maps is scheduling appointments, translating. I use a translation app called Rask to translate most of my keynote videos in Spanish and Portuguese, and that's made a huge difference for me. It's not perfect, but it works. And my learning has been that basically the practical stuff, that kind of nuts and bolts routine, AI will do a great job making life more efficient and easier. And that's not really dangerous by itself. That's basically just dangerous as a consequence of our routines changing. But it has great economic impact. So that's good. And I have lots of great examples for that. And this is what I keep telling people, rather than thinking about ex machina and domination and consciousness and human agency, we should think about how we can use better software, which is intelligent assistance.
And you mentioned a great economic impact. Is it possible to quantify this economic impact?
Yeah, I just taken my own example. The fact that I can now speak Portuguese and Spanish and Finnish and even Hindi increases my chance of speaking to people in those places. And they know that I don't speak Spanish, but it gets them to understand what I'm saying. And then when there's a gig, they have a translator, right? So it increases my economic possibility. And then there's other things like, I work with lawyers. The lawyers are saying, okay, we've got a 550-page PDF about a lawsuit about some real estate affairs in Miami. And now you upload this to Google Learning, Google Notebook, and it will summarize the deal points for you in 14 seconds. And you may not be aware that they're not the right deal points, but it's a head start. Has great economic impact because it's like a super tool. 10 years ago, you weren't on the cloud, and now you're on the cloud because the cloud is faster. And you can use a mobile phone to access everything. So it's like that, basically. And I think the forecast shows that in some jobs, it could be 3, 4, 5x efficiency, which is not always good. But basically what happens is that you can get very good at something very quickly. If you want to be very good, like a writer or creative person, it's still the same job, but you have better tools. And the learning has been, for me, a person with the better tools usually gets a better job.
The GDP, and there's the prediction that the AI can really increase the world's GDP, right? You think that is correct? That is
correct. The problem is that it increases GDP unevenly. So it increases our GDP because we are already in the pole position of increase. We are already increasing. I mean, if you're the top 10%, which we belong to, no doubt, then you're going to increase because this is just the way that the polarization of capital works. And technology is capital ultimately, right? The hard part will be to figure out how to make it even enough for everybody else so that they are doing the sort of more menial jobs or commodity jobs. They have to be uplifted, and that's a policy issue. And the problem that we're seeing right now, primarily with intelligent systems, is that we are not looking at this far enough. We're looking at the short-term things and the immediate boosts, and then side effects are not interesting. It's like oil and gas and coal. We had the industrial society and side effects were somebody else's problem. But now the side effects will be huge of societal shifts, of disinformation, of bias, and all of these things. And this is what worries me about companies like OpenAI and Microsoft, is that they are kind of in charge of this now. I mean, they're in charge of public policy. The military now, by extension, because basically this is now a national security issue, not how you're going to use simple software to make appointments or so, but how you inform people and how you run databases and how you, of course, run drones, things like that. I mean, these are issues that are not issues of private companies. It's not like SAP would be responsible for the future of humanity. And this is kind of what's happening, is that Microsoft and OpenAI are out there saying, we're building an artificial superintelligence.
The AGI.
Yeah, and that's just not a good idea, because the extreme version of that is a machine that is impossible to control. It's like saying, okay, we're going to invent a nuclear bomb, the Manhattan Project. We're going to have a Manhattan Project for AI, and then we're hoping that nobody will use it. And no, that's not what's going to happen, right? Just like the Manhattan Project, it will get used and it won't be good.
There are other analysts that think it's fear mongering, and they think that human intelligence is more than this zeros and ones of artificial
No, I
intelligence.
agree. I agree with all of that. But the problem is that this intelligence that we're building is not like a human. It's superior because it is a machine, right? So there's a limit to how much computing you can do in your brain. You can't expand your brain by 5x. There's no room for that. You can't have faster connections between the neurons. Those are all things that are physical limitations. Computers have none of that. As systems are growing, they are going to become infinitely more powerful at the most basic computational jobs than us. That's just the nature of technology. There's no limit to that, right? With us, there are limits. So right now, we're still kind of even. Some people would say not quite even yet, but soon. Okay, but the potential of AI to be computing faster is clearly there. And we can see that in front of us. It's not that the AI has to be evil to cause damage. It can be done by, for example, complete dependency. If I have, as people are propagating, like Microsoft and others, if I have an AI digital assistant, like Siri, and this assistant is super intelligent and becomes like a person to me, which is the goal, of course, then I become utterly dependent on that. And like I'm dependent on the iPhone, but times 1,000. And so I could not really do things anymore. And I wouldn't want to unplug it because it's doing all these things for me. And so that is a much higher level of dependency than a computer or an iPhone or an iPad.
So what do we do? What is your advice, I guess, for governments and for users and companies?
First, I think on the top level of the existential question, we need a non-proliferation agreement. We need an agreement that says we're going to build super intelligence with the IQ of 1 billion. There's almost 99.9999% certainty of that going bad because it's uncontrollable and self-replicating.
Do you feel like the blocks are close to that? Because it doesn't seem like the United States, Europe, and China and other Asia Pacific countries will meet and confer about this.
It's like nuclear weapons. What is the alternative? An arms race of AGI would kill us all instantly, basically. You can think of it in different ways, but the reason that something comes to pass like this is because something happens, usually. Like we have a stock market crash because of AI, very likely to happen. Or we could have a air traffic control crash based on some problem with AI.
Do you see the European Union interested in doing something proactively before something like that happens?
Yes. This is the whole purpose behind the AI Act, is to establish those rules and say, okay, here's 4 categories: 1, total no-go; 1, go only if; and the other one, go if you share; and the other one is free for all. And 95% of things are free to go because they're business applications, right? So, I mean, we care about those things, but they're not existential. So if my job is 40% eroded because there's automation, we'll figure something out, but it's not existential to the world. Somebody once said, we don't regulate a hammer because I can kill somebody with a hammer. So we don't have regulation on hammers, but hammers can be used to kill. The magnitude of a hammer is nothing compared to the magnitude of AI. These are tools that can kill or they can build. But we need to figure out a way that the killing potential is greatly reduced. And this is definitely a big issue. And now what we're doing now is we're saying, okay, in the name of business, progress, techno-optimism, we're going to let these companies build whatever they can build.
Yeah. So you would say that disinformation, deepfakes, and this more existential threat are the biggest negatives of the current development of AI.
Let's put it this way. If you're going to shoot to build an artificial general intelligence, you're essentially shooting to make most people unemployed. That's what it means. It's a machine for unemployment. If a machine gets generally intelligent, means it understands everything in real time, the entire internet, every communication, every person, everything that has ever happened. The machine understands in the sense of every language and every possible meaning. And so that means that a lot of work that we think of as human work would cease to be, we can't compete because they're essentially free. The advent of artificial general intelligence is potentially 5 years away. I always say 2030 to be safe, but that's basically what it is. And there's trillions of dollars. I mean, this is the biggest raise of money that you've ever seen in technology. It's bigger than anything we have ever invested in climate change. And so now we have two big pinnacles. One is green everything, that's all the money goes there, climate technology and AI. The challenge on both of those things is that we are doing this not to necessarily increase flourishing, but to increase profit.
And so talk to me about what is this project that you have?
Yeah, it's a campaign that I'm working on. You need to be commissioned, licensed, supervised to build something that is equal of the nuclear bomb, because it's pretty hard to build a nuclear bomb, but not an AI, especially when it's open source. So if you're building something like this, you're running something like this for a profit company, you need to be subject to regulation and supervision, and there needs to be a non-proliferation agreement. Not every country can have their own AGI. It's not that this is possible next month, but in scientific terms, it's definitely possible because we're on this exponential chart of more data, more computing power, more GPU. And the paradox is, many of those companies have openly said for years now that this could be heaven or hell. And it's just kind of accepted that they can dabble with this. Right. So I think we need to have a framework that says you have to be licensed to do that, or you have to have permission. You have to collaborate. And it's not just about selling more products. Sometimes it's good to forego options, like to say, we're going to build IA, we're going to use artificial intelligence, we're going to use it for business, we're going to use it to solve problems, but we're not going to build an omnipotent digital network so that we can become the second tier intelligence.
In your conversations with other futurists, what is the common sense? Are people on board with your vision? Do they have other ideas that they're sharing with you?
I think people are by and large aboard with this concept. To make that happen, we have to think wider. And there are quite a few people thinking wider, but if they prove to think wider, they get punished by the stock market. As a result, the two biggest companies in the world, NVIDIA, making the juice for the AI, and the second one, Saudi Arabian oil company. And this kind of logic of profit above everything, that's the end period of humanity. Because basically what it does, it brings it to the top, and then there's too many problems and it all collapses together. Because we've never fixed any of the problems, like climate change, because we have this one objective. And so a lot of people are saying we would, if we could, go down this direction. And then we have the Oppenheimer effect among the scientist friends and researcher friends and AI friends that I have, of saying, I'm just doing what is scientifically possible because it needs to be done. It's progress. I'm saying, no, that's not how it works, because you're going to make something that somebody else will decide how to use. And you have nothing to say about it.
So to finish, let's just establish if you are still an optimist, a cautious optimist, or are you very pessimistic? For instance, this is a very big election year. Things can go in very different ways here in the United States. And the future of AI will depend on that, because whoever's in the White House will have a different approach to regulation and everything else. How do you characterize yourself right now? Cautious optimist or completely pessimistic?
Right now, I would say it will get worse before it gets better. That is because people fear the future because they don't feel a lot of hope. And they rack up all of the negative stories. I think we're entering a period of this year where there will be some loss and some wins. There'll be more polarization. But I'm hopeful exactly because we are at the pinnacle of new solutions coming in with science and technology that we could use to solve pretty much every practical problem. But we're not spending nearly enough time on alignment and on collaboration. We're spending trillions of dollars on progress and inventing things. We don't look at everything else. We just go ahead and everybody does their own thing. And that won't work because there are too many side effects. So that's my biggest worry. So I'm extremely optimistic there that we can solve things like cancer or water or power, energy. But I'm pessimistic on us voluntarily coming together and collaborate so this can end well. That's why this campaign of denying AGI is to say that if you're pursuing this, if you're creating a digital entity that looks to supersede us, this is not something that is private company business. That's like messing with humanity.